government and President of the Republic of Ghana, and also on behalf of His Excellency Jean-Claude Cassibrou, President of the ECOWAS Commission, I'd like to welcome our guest speaker and members of his delegation warmly to the ECOWAS Commission. Secretary Blinken, it is a pleasure to host you today during your maiden visit to Sub-Saharan Africa, including a stop in the Federal Republic of Nigeria as U.S. Secretary of State. Your visit to the ECOWAS Commission resonates well with us because it confirms the shared belief that regional economic communities can play very important roles in conflict resolution and the maintenance of peace and security. Equally, they can play pivotal roles in the preservation of democracy and good governance, especially in upholding human rights. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our guest speaker has a long and sterling record of public service that commenced at the State Department. Over the last 30 years, he has contributed greatly to shaping the foreign policy of the United States of America. He served in the Obama administration, first as National Security Advisor to then Vice President Joe Biden, and later on as Deputy Secretary of State from 2015 to 2017. Our guest speaker is now the Secretary of State of the United States of America. Please join me in welcoming Secretary Antony Blinken very heartily to this event, during which he will be delivering a speech on United States policy in Africa. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Mr. Secretary, you have the floor. Thank you for coming.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Vice President Koroma. Thank you for the very kind introduction, but thank you especially for your leadership here at ECOWAS, not just today, but every single day. And it's very good to be here at ECOWAS, which makes vital contributions across the region to economic integration, security, democracy, climate, health, and more. And it's great to be back in Abuja on, indeed, my first trip to Sub-Saharan Africa as U.S. Secretary of State. The giant of Africa is an apt nickname for Nigeria because this country looms large. Your strengths are undeniable: a dynamic democracy, a robust economy, and a very powerful civil society. Challenges you face are undeniable as well, including the disruption and insecurity caused by terrorism and armed groups. Then there's Nigeria's cultural influence. People everywhere listen to Afrobeats. They read Wole Soyinka and Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. They watch Nollywood movies. They cheer for Nigerian athletes. They eat jollof rice. Now, I know there's a fierce rivalry among West African countries about who makes the best jollof. Well, I'm a diplomat, so I'm going to steer very clear of that one. But in short, what happens here in Nigeria is felt around the world. And that, in a nutshell, is why I've come to Abuja. The United States knows that on most of the urgent challenges and opportunities we face, Africa will make the difference. We can't achieve our goals around the world, whether that's ending the COVID-19 pandemic, building a strong and inclusive global economy, combating the climate crisis, or revitalizing democracy and defending human rights, without the leadership of African governments, institutions, and citizens. Countries like Nigeria are not just global leaders. They're increasingly prominent around the world beyond this region. And they're deserving of a prominent seat wherever the most consequential issues are discussed. Institutions like the African Union, ECOWAS, SADC, IGAD should play a larger role, and they should have a greater voice in global debates. The United States firmly believes that it's time to stop treating Africa as a subject of geopolitics and start treating it as the major geopolitical player it has become. The facts speak for themselves. This is a continent of young people, energized, innovative, hungry for jobs and opportunity. By 2025, more than half the population of Africa will be under age 25. By the year 2050, 1 in 4 people on Earth will be African. And Nigeria will surpass the United States as the 3rd most populous country in the world. Africa is poised to become one of the world's most important economic regions. When the 54-country African Continental Free Trade Area is fully implemented, it will comprise the 5th largest economic bloc in the world, representing a huge source of jobs, consumers, innovation, and power to shape the global economy. As we work to end the COVID-19 pandemic and strengthen global health security, we must work closely with the countries of Africa to build public health systems here that can prevent, detect, and respond to future emergencies. Thanks to this crisis, but also its solutions. At this moment of testing for democracy around the world, we see across Africa a microcosm of what democracies can achieve, as well as the challenges they must overcome. And as we debate how to govern the use of technologies to ensure they strengthen democracies, not undermine them, the choices that governments, industries, and innovators make here will affect people's rights and freedoms everywhere for a long time to come. For all these reasons and more, I believe Africa will shape the future, and not just the future of the African people, but of the world. And that's why I'm here this week, visiting 3 countries that are democracies, engines of economic growth, climate leaders, drivers of innovation. We've just come from Kenya, where we announced a new initiative to help more people get vaccinated against COVID-19, committed for the first time to join negotiations on a global agreement to combat ocean plastic pollution, and launched a project with National Geographic to empower young people across Africa fighting against the climate crisis. Here in Nigeria, we marked the signing of a $2.1 billion development assistance agreement that supports our collaboration in the fundamentals, in health, in education, agriculture, good governance. Later today, I'll visit the Innovate Startup Hub to meet some of the inventors and founders who embody Nigeria's entrepreneurial drive. And then in Senegal, I will join 4 U.S. companies signing agreements to collaborate with the Senegalese government on infrastructure projects. Visit the Institut Pasteur de Dakar, which is working toward COVID vaccine production with American support and investment. And meet with women tech and business leaders, because women are a powerful force for growth and innovation in Senegal and everywhere. My trip reflects the breadth and depth of our partnerships in Africa, how we're working together to find innovative solutions to new challenges, and how we're investing in long-term sources of strength rather than short-term fixes. Now, delivered worldwide. By next spring, that number will be well over 1 billion donated doses. We've also announced that we'll significantly ramp up our vaccine manufacturing capacity to meet global need. We've provided more than 50 million doses to 43 African countries, and more are on the way. All of this with no political strings attached. We've given more than $1.9 billion in COVID-related assistance for urgent needs like emergency food and other humanitarian support. And the new public-private partnership, the Global COVID Corps, will connect American businesses with countries that need logistical help with the so-called last mile, turning vaccine doses into actual shots in arms. Kenya will be the first country to partner with the COVID Corps, and we plan for it to be the first of many. We're following the lead. Numbers of vaccines come from floods, advancing deserts, food insecurity, competition for resources, economic losses, migration. Lake Chad was a vital source of water, food, livelihoods for people for centuries. Now, it's almost gone, shrunk to 1/20th the size that it was 60 years ago. If you look at the satellite photographs, they're dramatic. And the fact that Africa is bearing this burden, despite being responsible for only a small fraction of the emissions that caused the crisis in the first place, makes it critical that developed countries, including the United States, do much more to support Africa against this threat. Now, a few weeks ago, President Biden launched the President's Emergency Plan for Adaptation and Resilience. He'll work with our Congress to allocate $3 billion every year by 2024 to finance climate adaptation projects around the world. It's the largest commitment ever made by the United States to reduce the impact of climate change on those most endangered by it. As part of this plan, we will support the Africa Adaptation Initiative, launched by heads of state across Africa 6 years ago, and especially their accelerator program, which aims to plan and finance infrastructure that's energy efficient and resilient to climate change. We'll continue our work with the African Union and other regional partners on climate-smart investments in agriculture, protecting forests, improving climate education, and to reduce emissions while also creating jobs and increasing access to affordable energy. The United States and our partners across Africa are making major strides in clean energy. Through our Power Africa program, we've connected more than 25 million homes and businesses across the continent to electricity, 80% of which is based on renewables. We're helping advance the Mega Solar Partnership to develop Africa's largest solar farm, a joint project by Botswana and Namibia, along with international finance institutions. Our own Development Finance Corporation supports renewable energy across Africa, including a solar project right here in Nigeria, wind farms in Senegal and Kenya. These ventures could be just the start of our partnerships in so-called green tech, the industries and infrastructure of a low-carbon, climate-resilient future, everything from solar panels to electric bikes and cars to sustainable shipping. It's a huge opportunity to boost economic competitiveness, to strengthen supply chain resilience, to create jobs, to drive innovation. Just look at what Nigeria has done in financial tech with electronic payments, cryptocurrency, digital banking. And imagine what we could achieve together in building our green economic future. Vanessa Nakate, the Ugandan climate activist, gave an urgent plea in Glasgow last week to world leaders when she said that young people don't believe our climate promises anymore. Prove us wrong, she urged. Well, let's meet that challenge together. Third, we must build a more... The COVID-19 pandemic is not only a health crisis, it's an economic crisis as well. We must rebuild, and we must build back better. The US has supported Africa's economic resilience throughout the pandemic, by backing the suspension of debt for 32 African countries to date and getting more capital flowing to your economies. Looking ahead, we want to help create the kind of opportunity that doesn't benefit only the well-off, but creates good jobs for people at every income level and lays the foundation for more inclusive and environmental. And we want to protect workers and the environment. Too often, international infrastructure deals are opaque, coercive, and the pandemic has accelerated many of these trends. We see this happening across Africa. Leaders ignoring term limits, rigging or postponing elections, exploiting social grievances to gain and maintain power, arresting opposition figures, cracking down on the media, and allowing security services to enforce pandemic restrictions with brutality. Many Africans are now living under at least partially authoritarian governments, and militaries have taken over civilian governments 4 times this year. That's the highest number in 4 decades. There are good news stories about democracy in Africa too. In Niger, which had its first ever peaceful transfer of power this year, or Zambia, where the opposition party won elections, something few believed would be allowed to happen. Citizens there woke up long before dawn, some sleeping all night at polling stations, to make sure that they could vote. And even in places where democracy is under duress, it's inspiring to see people courageously raising their voices and calling for change, like the citizens marching in the streets and cities across Sudan to restore the civilian-led transition. Still, the recession of democracy in many places in Africa cannot be denied, and it is not the will of the people. Survey after survey in countries across the continent show that the people of Africa be they Ghanaian or Zambian or Ugandan or Tanzanian, support democracy. When given the choice between multi-party elections or strongman rule, one-party states or military control, they choose multi-party elections. That makes it all the more important that leaders show leadership and stop the democratic backsliding that is wiping away their citizens' aspirations. Now, I want to emphasize that democratic backsliding is not just an African problem. It's a global problem. My own country is struggling with threats to our democracy. And the solutions to those threats will come as much from Africa as from anywhere. We need countries from every part of the world to share best practices, to make public pledges, to hold each other accountable. And we need to show how democracies can deliver what citizens want, quickly and effectively. When we fail to do that, people lose their trust in the democratic model. And that fuels the arguments that authoritarian governments make, that their system is better. Now, that's exactly the idea behind the Summit for Democracy that President Biden will host next month. And we very much look forward to Nigeria's participation. Together, we must vow to fight what former President Obama called the cancer of corruption, which drains billions of dollars from economies while undermining people's dignity and gutting their faith in the system. We have to protect free and flourishing civil societies, which gives citizens a peaceful means to express grievances and to push for change. And we have to relentlessly defend human rights, which are the foundation of free, just, and stable societies. Americans and Africans share a yearning to live in places where their rights are respected, their voices are heard, their governments answer to them and deliver for them. Working together, we can support democracy in our countries and around the world. Fifth, we must advance lasting security and peace. We know that instability and insecurity are at the top of nearly every Nigerian's mind. The same could be said for people in Ethiopia, Somalia, Mozambique, Cameroon, Mali, Niger, and other countries across the continent. The threats posed by violent extremists, by criminals, internal armed conflict, these threats are very real and so present in people's lives. So is there potential to destabilize nations and regions, to undermine development, to ignite humanitarian disasters. Part of the answer is effective and professional security forces and local law enforcement that can protect citizens while respecting human rights. And many of our partners across Africa want to build their capacities in these areas. But tackling the root causes of conflict is just as important, maybe even more important. Not everything can be solved with more or better equipped armed forces. And attempts to address violent extremism have at times had the perverse effect of violating people's rights, contributing to grievances, and furthering cycles of violence. We urge governments to contribute to and commit to criminal justice and security sector approaches that respect rights, as well as greater accountability for abuses, which is critical for earning the public's trust. We think we can achieve better results in confronting insecurity if we work together to expand economic opportunity, especially for young people and others who might be drawn into criminal activity out of desperation, out of a feeling that they have no other choice. And to resolve conflicts, we stand ready to support swift and sustained diplomacy with national leaders, with regional organizations, with international allies and partner citizens, including women, who must always be at the table when peace is negotiated, and also with international institutions, including the United Nations. That's what's happening right now with the crises and conflicts in Ethiopia, Sudan, and Somalia. African leaders and institutions have stepped up to steer the diplomatic response. African diplomats are leading engagement at the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, the African Development Bank. The United States is using our diplomacy in all the ways we can to support these efforts. So I've covered a little bit of ground today, but everything I've said can be boiled down to this. The United States wants to strengthen our partnerships across Africa in ways that serve your interests, our interests, and the interests of people worldwide, whose lives and futures depend in part on what we can achieve together. And as a sign of our commitment to our partnerships across the continent, President Biden intends to host the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit to drive the kind of high-level diplomacy and engagement that can transform relationships and make effective cooperation possible. I said at the start that Africa is a continent of young people. I've met a few of them on this trip. Many of the issues I've mentioned today will help unleash their potential by creating new opportunities for them to lead, to learn, to build careers, to serve their communities, to achieve their dreams. One of my favorite examples of partnership between the United States and Africa is YALI, the Young African Leaders Initiative. It creates educational exchanges and networking opportunities for extraordinary young people across Africa. I've been lucky enough to meet with many YALI fellows and alumni, and I always walk away dazzled. They're starting social enterprises, helping people get vaccinated, studying agriculture and counseling at-risk teenagers, working in governments and writing for newspapers, creating art, and using it to forge connections in Africa and around the world. They're quite simply unstoppable. Our charge now is to take a page from their book. Let's channel their optimism and their energy as we meet today's challenges and opportunities together. Let's build the future that young people in all of our countries want and deserve. Thank you so very much for listening.
Distinguished guests, thank you for coming. If I can just ask folks to remain seated for a couple of minutes while the Secretary's team leaves the auditorium. Just 2 minutes, and then we'll let everyone head out. Thank you very much.